Hi everyone and welcome back to the Shack. In this episode we're taking a look at a real gem of a game, and one which I completely missed out on when it was first released, largely because I'm not German. This game was the second in a planned trilogy that the rise of the PC denied an ending. Well, kind of, but more on that later. So if you love top-down world exploration like the early Ultima games, Zelda-like 2D interiors, the turn-based battles of Final Fantasy, the dungeon-crawling excitement of Dungeon Master, and all the fun of badly pronounced names and places, then join me today as the Shack remembers Ambermoon. Here at the Shack, we'd like to give a huge thank you to the sponsor for this video, PCBWay. They help us out with all of our PCB fabrication needs and make fantastic boards at amazingly competitive prices. And it's not only PCBs that are on the menu. Apart from other fabrication services like CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication and injection moulding, PCBWay also have a great projects library of cool stuff to build from people all around the world. Oh, and if you don't like waving a soldering iron about, they can even assemble your PCBs for you. That's the PCB way. Right, on with the show. Ambermoon was developed by Thalion Software, designed by Eric Simon and Kirsten Koper, programmed by Yuri Horneman and Michael Bittner, and was released in 1993 for the Commodore Amiga, which, it has to be said, was past the peak of its commercial heyday as a platform at that point. However, Ambermoon joined a wealth of fantastic titles in the Amiga's library, and as mentioned at the start, was intended to be the second instalment in a trilogy of games, following part 1, Amber Star, which had released a year earlier in 1992. Set in the fantasy world of Liram. Anyway, Ambermoon is filled with various landscapes, towns, dungeons and magical locations, and the story begins with the protagonist, our young hero, receiving a summons from their dying grandfather. Grandad reveals that a great evil, which was believed to have been vanquished, is returning to Liram. Anyway, he urges the hero to seek out the remaining pieces of the Amber Star to prevent this evil from engulfing the world once more. How Grandad knows about this impending evil is all part of the story, so I won't spoil it, but let's just say he's definitely in the know. Anyway, he's now lying on his deathbed and thinking, what precious gift can I give to my beloved grandchild to cherish after I pass away? I know, a perilous quest with death around every corner. They'll like that. And so the main quest begins, and off we go collecting the pieces of the Amber Star. This journey takes our hero across where they must gather allies, explore ancient ruins, solve complex puzzles and fight a variety of enemies. In addition to the main storyline, Ambermoon features numerous side quests and subplots. These include helping townsfolk with their problems, exploring additional dungeons and discovering hidden treasures, all fairly standard RPG fare. But these side quests often provide deeper insights into the game's lore and characters, enriching the overall narrative. The game itself plays out in a number of different game mechanics, with a large overworld map that players can explore with various regions, each with its own unique environment, such as forests, mountains, deserts and oceans. You even got to go to the Forest Moon. No, not Endor, a different Forest Moon. Players can visit numerous towns and cities, each with NPCs offering quests, services and items, and these locations are crucial for gathering information, trading and resting. The game contains many dungeons and ruins that players must explore. These areas are often filled with traps, puzzles and enemies, providing challenging gameplay and hopefully rewards and answers that will help the player move forward in the game. Outdoor exploration is presented in a top-down view, while venturing into a building will switch to a different scale of 2D top-down perspective. Other environments, such as dungeons, are depicted in a first-person 3D view, and fights are yet another view very much like a lot of Japanese turn-based fighters. I think they call it a battle view. Now this combination of playstyles allows for varied gameplay and an immersive experience, and is amazingly not too jarring when moving from one to the other. As mentioned, the combat in Ambermoon is turn-based, requiring strategic planning and tactical decision making. Each character in your party is likely to have different strengths, weaknesses and special skills, making party composition an important aspect of the game. Your party gains experience from defeating enemies and completing quests, and as they do, they become stronger and gain access to new abilities and spells. You can of course customise your characters by choosing their skills, spells and equipment as you go. In the Brain over Brawn section, Ambermoon features numerous puzzles that players must solve to progress. These puzzles often include manipulating objects in the environment, finding hidden switches or deciphering cryptic clues. Magic plays a significant role in Ambermoon. Characters can learn and cast a variety of spells, each with different effects, such as healing, attacking or providing support. And the game offers a wide array of items and equipment that players can find, purchase or craft, and these include weapons, armour, potions and magical artefacts that enhance the character's abilities. So, in effect, everything that a good, solid role-playing game should have. Okay, so if it's all standard RPG stuff, what makes Ambermoon so special? Ambermoon received widespread acclaim for several reasons, distinguishing itself from other role-playing games on the Amiga and other systems of its time. Putting gameplay aside for a moment, the first thing that Ambermoon hits you with are the fantastic graphics in every part of the game. Graphics combined 2D and 3D perspectives almost seamlessly, were highly detailed and colourful, and captured the vibrant essence of its fantasy world, and the pixel art was among the best on the Amiga at the time. It still looks great today, over 30 years on from its release. But it was the plot that set Ambermoon apart. The storyline was compelling, despite being essentially the standard trope of the classic hero's journey involving a quest to gather stuff to combat an ancient evil, but somehow the narrative depth combined with well-developed characters kept players invested in the unfolding events. And the world was just well put together. Was richly detailed with its own history, cultures and legends. The extensive lore provided a strong sense of place and added depth to the exploration. Along the way were many memorable characters, well written and with actual contributions to the immersive experience. Dialogues and interactions added layers to the story rather than being something you wanted to quickly click through to get back to the walking around. The turn-based combat system required players to think tactically, utilising the unique abilities and spells of their party members to defeat their foes. The game's music, composed by Matthias Steinwachs, was atmospheric and memorable, enhancing the overall immersion. The soundtrack effectively captured the mood of different locations and situations, but in the main, Ambermoon was huge and technically quite amazing. The game pushed the Amiga's hardware to its limits, demonstrating what was possible on the platform. The trouble was, PCs were already starting to make the Amiga look a little dated, especially in the realms of 3D. The Amiga just wasn't as efficient at 3D texture mapping as other machines, having to do essentially the same operation multiple times across different bit planes. This is why the game's 3D sections are limited to 16 colours, using only 4-bit planes rather than the 5 needed to get to 32 colours. And whilst this was a far cry from the PC's 256 colour VGA, Ambermoon still managed to look pretty incredible. On top of this, the game featured an intuitive user interface that made managing inventory, navigating the world and engaging in combat straightforward and user-friendly, rather than having to remember hundreds of keyboard shortcuts or having bits of cardboard all over your keyboard to remind you what the keys do. I'm looking at you, Flight Simulator 2. While contemporaries on other platforms such as Ultima 7 on the PC or Final Fantasy VI on the SNES also featured rich stories and detailed worlds, Ambermoon's technical achievements on the Amiga, combined with its immersive storytelling and gameplay mechanics, set it apart. It managed to deliver a comparable experience on a less powerful system, which was a significant feat. So, what happened to part 3 of the Ambermoon trilogy? Well, unfortunately, despite Ambermoon selling well, it wasn't enough to stop Thalion Software going the way of many Amiga-centric software houses when VGA graphics cards and faster processors were taking hold in PC land. Thalion was bought by Blue Byte Software, where most of the original Ambermoon team took their early code for the Amiga's third game and redeveloped it for the PC platform, with Blue Byte eventually releasing it as their own IP under the title Albion. Although the setting is no longer, I'm going with Leramion, Albion instead being set in the year 2227 in deep space, it is still considered to be the spiritual successor to Ambermoon and shares many of the same game mechanics. If, like me, you're new to the game or perhaps never played it in its original German text, you may be interested to know that thanks to a clever human going by the alias of Pierre de Cour, has remade the game for more modern platforms. There's a link to the GitHub site in the comments. Do yourself a favour and play it. Right, until next time in the shack, it's goodbye from me.